Hey, this is Notser, and this is the Tier 10 German destroyer Z-52. The Z-52 has an impressive torpedo rearm cycle. We're just going to make it better. Improved protection for the main armament, improved accuracy for the main battery. Also, it helps the traverse of the torpedo so you can bring them on target when you're in that close fighting scenario. Faster torpedo rearm, improved propulsion protection. If you have one available, you might consider getting the improved speed boost consumable module that is only found in super containers, although that's very rare. Improved propulsion, concealment, preventative maintenance, faster torpedo acceleration, last stand, of course, on every single destroyer, survivability, faster torpedo rearm again, superintendent because of hydroacoustic because it's a German, and then concealment as the final skill. I've had a lot of consistent success with this particular build in the Z-52. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we are on the map Sea of Fortune. The Z-52 is going up against pretty fair number, a couple tier 10s, a couple tier 9s, and a couple tier 8s. Now, the German destroyer identity is pretty familiar if you've played through all of them. Obviously, if this is your first interaction with a German destroyer, you're like, I don't have any idea. Basic idea is that you can't afford to fire your guns while being visible. It's a larger than average destroyer thickness-wise. AP tends to stick. If you happen to run into some opposition that went towards a point because you're aggressively pushing forward, you could try to swing out a couple torpedoes. Because the rearm is so quick, you will most likely be the first on either side to have your torpedoes ready to go and send them. And that's what I really enjoy about the Germans. You can be extremely aggressive, pushing forward, sending at a smoke cloud, hoping for a hit, when the enemy is still rearming. You also have a hydroacoustic. I could have continued pushing forward, however, we predicted correctly that the player was either going to stay in the territory or come back and reuse the smoke. You notice that he moved out of capturing C point when I moved out of capturing C point almost a second or two behind me, or ahead of me, so I had a little bit of window where I could have captured. I didn't. I chose to move towards B. On the stream, I was discussing, this is what I really feel is the right course of action. Maybe not. Maybe not, because we are being detected by radar. Yes, radar. It has to be the Baltimore, so I'm going to move off. The surprise is completely gone, and I probably should have just headed back to C point in an attempt to capture it for my team, since I was able to take out the enemy destroyer. And notice on the enemy team, both destroyers are dead. That should be a guaranteed victory for my team. You would think that. So the Z-52, what is unique about it? Well, it has the German hydroacoustic. It is the only German destroyer with hydroacoustic that extends out to the German ranges. All the other German destroyers have to deal with the sort of standard hydro that you would get tier for tier. This one not. It is, I think, 5.8. It's a really long range. That's all I gotta say. And a good strategy to employ with any hydroacoustic is to use it to detect targets inside smoke and don't give them line of sight to fire on you. If no one on their enemy team is in line of sight, it's a free kill. You can see the target, he can't see you. He'll never see you as long as he's in a smoke. He has to leave a smoke. A lot of times players will not want to leave their smoke for obvious reasons, and you take advantage of that. That's one aspect of the Germans. Now, other aspects of the Germans that a lot of players probably should take better advantage of: the fast torpedo rearm. I don't think people really appreciate it, and initially when the Germans were released, they were bad-mouthed. Oh, they're torpedoes, they don't do any damage. Well, no, because they have a rearm that's twice as fast as pretty much every other line, save for maybe the Americans, and the Japanese can't even compete. as far as torpedo realm. It's extremely quick. It's basically always up whenever you need it, unless you're crazy, like really crazy. So what I like to do on the Germans is obviously objective control. You have hydroacoustic. If you feel like there's a threat of torpedoes or maybe an invisible target on the other side of the island, great tool for you and your allies. Don't be afraid to use it for your allies, by the way. I mean, it is inherently selfish at times the way a destroyer needs to play in order to play the objective and also control. But if you sense the possibility of torpedoes, definitely use it. Absolutely. Now, I felt like the Baltimore was coming in at B point. Of course he was. And he's able to avoid the blind send, use his radar, completely detect me, and it's on. I'm out in the open. Thankfully, he's not a Des Moines. I can't do anything, though. There's no reason to pop smoke until his radar is over. How do you know when his radar is over? Well, you just time it. I don't know any other way to tell you. You need to just know these numbers. And once you're pretty much safe out of his radar range, the timer is up. You can go on with your day, pop your smoke, and hide. Oh, and by the way, if you're ever given the side or a potential target for AP, use it as a German. Obviously, it'll ricochet because it's 128. It won't overmatch anything, but if they're fully broad and you find a weaker location, maybe a bow or stern armor, absolutely, you will do far, far more damage than you will with your HE. And that's a German destroyer trait. I wouldn't hang my hat on it. Initial builds of the Z-52 included like super range. You can get the range module. I think it's the farthest shooting destroyer in the game, theoretically, because they deny that to the Hydroacoustic for obvious reasons. I wouldn't really do that. Yeah, sure, it's cute, but your real power is in your torpedo systems. Whether you want to play that is up to you, but really spend the time considering, oh wow, I've got pretty fast rearmed torpedoes. Enemy battleships are going to be pushing a flank. If you can get on a flank that you know the enemy is dominating, you can stay out of their detection and send, and send again. And that's exactly what we're going to try to do here. My team has an AB. Feels fine, right? We're going to send against these battleships who are trying to push around C point and come around back into the B point area. They don't really have a lot of options. They either angle against my teammates or they angle against impending torpedoes. And clearly they chose to avoid the possibility of taking broadside damage from my teammates. I can exploit that. And I can continue to exploit that every single torpedo sent. Now, if you are in an instance where there are still destroyers up, I would not recommend doing this or against someone who has radar, because you are leaving yourself vulnerable to a close-range battleship shot, and the Germans are very susceptible to any caliber compared to the Americans, even the Japanese and the Soviets. They just are a thick THICC destroyer. AP, more often than not, is going to stick in your ship. It's going to do 33% of the damage it's supposed to do versus 10%. You notice it all the time. It is very dangerous to be seen close to a battleship. So that's the only caveat to this strategy. Don't get too close. Don't be stupid. Pay attention to who's on the flank and try and punish them. I'm going to try and punish the Tirpitz. Maybe sent a little bit too far behind, but the Grosse Kurfürst is also moving forward. He, of course, has Hydroacoustic, so he's just not using Hydroacoustic. He should have used Hydroacoustic, but he didn't see the first send. We set a flood on the Grosse Kurfürst. He's going to have to use damage control. I wish I could use some sort of communication. This target is vulnerable to dots, both fire and flood. Shoot that guy, but that would be too useful to the team, I think. And you can just see the amount of battleships. It's really humorous because they're just not. They have to commit to one thing: hunting the destroyer or angling against targets. And my team, for whatever reason, is not really using this advantage to the fullest. Now, some people might disagree with my torpedo acceleration choice. 10.5 is a great number, but for me, if I've got about 2 kilometer range clearance between the concealment of the ship and the torpedoes, I think it's worth taking 100% of the time. My reasoning for that is it allows the torpedo to get to the target quicker. So in a close range joust scenario, you're just going to have less reaction time, even though you know they're coming, which is a huge advantage. Also, at a medium to long range, it's going to get there, and maybe the torpedo gets there. Maybe one torpedo gets on a target that it would not have normally. That adds up in hundreds and hundreds of games. You were thinking about 10 to 15,000 damage that you do extra with that single torpedo that gets on the target between a reaction time of what, like 9.7 and 9.2. It's very small, but it's no smaller than increasing the accuracy of your guns, increasing the damage output by selecting AP in a certain scenario, HE in a certain scenario. It's all about these tiny rewards, and we got a reward in the Grossa Kua first. We flooded him out. He had to use damage control previously, and it wasn't ready. If it was a similar situation for like a, I don't know, Shimakaze, they would probably have damage control, unless you did a 2 torpedo, 1 torpedo stun. Now, I'm making a huge mistake here. I was getting so cocky that my torpedoes were successful on so many different battleships that I sort of try to work my way towards C point, not realizing that the Chapayev was pushing that way too, who has radar. I choose to use my smoke, and I use Hydroacoustic. I can see him, he can't see me. That's a great advantage of the Germans. However, it's not going to last that long, I'm afraid. You do have to deal with a subpar smoke. I personally don't think it's too bad. I find that the longer you're in smoke, the more vulnerable you are anyway. So losing 20, 30, 40 seconds on a smoke, in the grand scheme of things, isn't a big deal if you're playing it as the typical selfish destroyer. I, on the other hand, just got spotted. Thankfully, his guns are pointing the other way. It'll take him an eternity to turn those Yamato guns. And I'm going to use my torpedoes on this guy. Now, his secondaries are opening up. Chapayev on my backside's opening up, doing massive damage to us. And yeah, we die so quickly to the enemy. Clearly he's turning. I should have sent the second set maybe a little bit tighter. We actually miss out on the kill. And somehow, my team, with a 2-base advantage, is going to lose this game. And you can't beat yourself up. Other than my personal mistake of getting trapped, I feel like I played it correctly. I was on the primary flank, kept the torpedo pressure up. They had to consider my existence the entire time. My team could have exploited the angling if they were to be in a position to do that. It's just the way it works on random battles. As far as the Z-52 is concerned, and by the way, this is going to be a loss, clearly. We just know it's going to be a loss. The Z-52, great hydroacoustic, great torpedo rearm. You have the potential, if given the side of your target, to use AP and to punish extremely hard. Now, with all that said, smoke doesn't last very long. It's nice that the indicator is on the screen now, the timer. You can use that. There's really not an excuse to overstay your welcome. The torpedoes don't do as much damage per salvo. You have to keep in mind, it is designed to refire. If the target is full life, a full life battleship for instance, like the Yamato, you probably won't kill him with all 8 of your torpedoes hitting him because his torpedo belt's insane. Everything to consider. So just don't box yourself in, don't fire while you're visible, and consider smoke. It has a shorter cooldown. But if you consider all that stuff and you understand your weaknesses, your strengths are really apparent. Hydroacoustic, AP on your guns when the broadside target, and also the torpedoes. I honestly love the Germans. They've forced a more disciplined as I can get, destroyer gameplay out of me, and it's great. It's great fun. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.